All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are tackling one of the most famous sayings out there, one that a lot of people think comes straight from the Bible. It sounds wise, it sounds responsible, but does it hold up to scrutiny? You know the one. You've probably heard it a million times. Maybe you've even said it yourself. It just feels right, doesn't it? It sounds like a piece of solid, common-sense wisdom that fits right in with hard work and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And here's the million-dollar question. For a phrase that is so wrapped up in religious culture, you would think you could just flip open the Bible and find it, right? Well, the short answer is nope, it's not in there. But the long answer, the why it's not in there, reveals a truth that is actually the polar opposite of what this saying implies. Let's just break down what this phrase really suggests. It basically sets up a transaction. It says, okay, you do your part first. You put in the work, you take the initiative, you clean up your own mess. Then God will step in and give you a little boost. It puts us in the driver's seat, and God is just the co-pilot. So, if that's the popular idea, what does the Bible actually say? Let's put this phrase side by side with what's really in the scriptures. Let's start with Romans chapter 5, verse 6. I want you to zero in on that one word, helpless. It doesn't say while we were trying our best or after we finally started to get it together. It says that God acted for us when we were utterly, completely helpless. This verse just forces you to ask the question, right? Based on what we just read, did God wait on us to make the first move? And the answer is a clear, resounding no. His action wasn't a reaction to our strength. It was an intervention in our weakness. He stepped in at the very moment we could do nothing for ourselves. Now let's go over to Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1. The Bible takes this idea of helplessness and, believe it or not, it takes it even further. The metaphor here isn't just being weak or stuck, it's being dead. Spiritually speaking, we were dead. It's a pretty blunt question, isn't it? But think about it. What can a dead person do to make themselves alive? The answer is obvious. Absolutely nothing. You can't take one step. You can't even breathe. You can't contribute to your own resurrection at all. And this is so important. The story of the gospel isn't about God helping people who are helping themselves. It's about God rescuing the dead. That's the whole idea of grace, which we see in verse 5. It's getting something you could never earn at the exact moment you were powerless to do anything about it. And hey, Jesus himself says this pretty clearly in John chapter 6, verse 44. He says the only way anyone can come to him is if the Father draws them. God always makes the first move. He's the one who starts the whole process. You know, this isn't just some abstract idea. This belief that we need to help God out can have some really serious, real-world consequences. Let's look at a famous story from the Bible that shows exactly what happens when people try to take matters into their own hands. Okay, so here's the story of Abraham and Sarah. God makes this incredible, clear promise. You will have a son. But then, crickets. Years go by and nothing's happening. So they start to get impatient, and they decide, well, maybe God needs a little help. They come up with their own plan, which results in the birth of Ishmael. And that one act of helping God, it didn't speed things up. It introduced jealousy, conflict, and family strife that lasted for generations. This really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Their actions didn't come from a place of faith. They came from a lack of faith. They chose to rely on their own scheme instead of trusting that God knew what he was doing and could keep his own promise. And that's the lesson for us, right? When we live by the motto, God helps those who help themselves, we can fall into that exact same trap, trying to force things to happen our way instead of just trusting God's timing and his process. So, when you boil it all down, you're left with two totally competing ideas. It's a fundamental clash between two completely different ways of relating to God. And here's the contrast in black and white. On one side, you have the popular phrase, it teaches self-reliance. It tells you to be good enough, strong enough to fix yourself first, and then God will help. But on the other side, you have the actual message of the Bible, the gospel, and it teaches God reliance. It says God doesn't wait for you to be strong. He saves the helpless. He doesn't tell you to fix yourself. He says, come as you are. So, if the invitation isn't help yourself and then I'll help you, what is it? What is the actual invitation that God gives us? Well, here it is, straight from Jesus in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Listen to who he's calling. Is it the strong, the people who have it all together? No, he's calling the weary and the burdened. He's calling the very people who have finally admitted that they can't help themselves anymore. You see, the ticket to get in isn't being strong enough. It's just being honest about your weakness. It's admitting that you need him. That's the real call. Come as you are. And check this out from Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16. When do we find grace and help? It says we find it in time of need. Help isn't the reward you get after you fixed your problem. It's the lifeline he throws you right in the middle of it. So maybe it's time for a little switch. Let's throw out that old, unbiblical phrase. Let's replace it with what's actually true. The truth isn't that God helps those who help themselves. The biblical truth is that God helps the helpless. And when you really grab hold of this, it changes everything. It creates a whole new mindset. It means you can actually believe that God is big enough to keep his promises without you having to frantically interfere. It means your main job isn't to take control, but to simply trust the one who is already in control. And so that's the final question I want to leave you with. Something to really think about in your own life, in your job, with your family, in your faith. Ask yourself this: am I trying to help God, or am I truly trusting him? Because the answer to that question changes everything.